I knew something was off when I woke up at 2 a.m. in a quiet, cold room. But not because of the weather. The blanket next to me was empty, and in that half-asleep haze I heard his voice. Low, hurried, like he was trying to hide the whole world inside a secret phone call. My heart pounded, like my instincts were dragging me out of a dream. I had no idea my life was about to spiral into a whirlwind. A double-sided game, meticulously planned, with me as the pawn. But that night, for the first time, I began to hear the truth in whispers in the dark. My name is Nova, 34 years old, a civil attorney in Chicago, and I used to think I married the right man. Zachary, my husband, is a tech entrepreneur, smooth as spun sugar, always knowing the right thing to say at the right time. We'd been married for 6 years. 6 years that seemed stable. Turned out to be a perfectly staged performance. And that night, the curtain began to tear. I sat up in the dark, didn't turn on the light, didn't make a sound. Zach's voice was coming from the hallway, so low I had to hold my breath to hear it clearly. Just a little while longer, she still doesn't suspect anything. I froze. She? Who? Who was he reassuring at 2 a.m. while his wife slept in the same house? My throat tightened. Every word hit me like a punch to the chest. I heard footsteps. He was coming back. I dove into bed like a thief, pulled the blanket up to my chin and pretended to be deep asleep. He climbed into bed, his faintly familiar cologne drifting into my nose. But for the first time in years, it felt foreign. "You asleep?" he whispered. Then, without waiting for an answer, turned to face me, placing a hand on my shoulder like nothing had happened. I didn't respond, but my mind was racing with 100 theories. The man beside me, the one I trusted, loved and called family, was lying. And I needed to know the truth. The next morning, Zach acted like nothing had happened. He made breakfast, kissed my cheek like every other day, and breezed through the kitchen with his phone in hand. But this time, I missed nothing. I noted every gesture, every glance. And when he left for work, I knew I couldn't sit still any longer. I opened my laptop, logged into our bank account. I wasn't one to check our finances often. Zach was better at that, so I'd always let him handle most of the investments. But this time, I needed to see it for myself. My eyes scanned the transaction history and every line made me shiver. $480. Internal transfer. $950. ATM withdrawal in Phoenix, Arizona. $2,100. Unidentified spending. $700. Pay me Tech Holdings? Never heard of it. I bit my lip, double-checked everything. These transactions had been going on for the past 3 months. Not large enough to raise suspicion, but consistent like clockwork. Like someone was trying to quietly bleed the money out, without attracting attention. I took screenshots, saved every piece of evidence. A chill ran down my spine. I wasn't just suspicious anymore. I was sure. And then, that evening, a golden opportunity presented itself. Zach left his phone on the table when he went to shower. Screen down like always. But this time, it lit up with a new message. I didn't want to be a spy. But I couldn't keep being blind in my own marriage either. I gently tilted the phone, read the preview. Just make sure she still doesn't know anything. Everything's almost done. Ilya Morrow. I froze. My heart stopped. Who is Ilya Morrow? And what the hell is almost done? There was no doubt anymore. Zach was hiding something big from me. And Ilya? Might be the key to uncovering everything. I placed the phone back exactly as it was, pretending to know nothing. But from that moment on, I'd made up my mind. If Zach was playing a double game, I wasn't going to be the one who lost. The next morning, Zach brewed coffee for both of us like he hadn't just pushed me to the edge of losing my mind. Sunlight poured through the kitchen window, lighting up the face of the man I used to trust completely. Now all I saw was someone I didn't recognize. He smiled, a fleeting smile like smoke, then sat across from me, placing a cup in front of me with a gesture so kind it felt fake. "I think we should have a serious talk," he said. I looked up, trying to keep my face neutral. Anything serious coming from him was never good news. "About what?" I asked, my voice flat like a frozen lake. Zach exhaled like what he was about to say made perfect sense, then placed his hand on the table, trying to make a connection I knew had died long ago. "I think we should reorganize our finances a bit, just in case something unexpected happens, accidents, illness, or unforeseen things." I almost laughed. The man scheming to drain his wife's assets was now teaching her how to prepare for the unexpected. "How exactly do you want to reorganize our finances?" "I just mean pulling everything together, that's all. You know, account lists, passwords, investments. We should keep it all in one place. If something happens to either of us, the other will know how to handle things." His voice was sweet as sugar, but his eyes couldn't hide the calculation. I swallowed a bitter sip of coffee. This fake concern gave me chills. I nodded, playing along. "Sure, I'll put it all together." He smiled. I smiled too. Two masked actors facing off in a brightly lit kitchen, like waiting for the final scene in a bad play. That night, Zach was strangely pleasant again. He cooked, opened wine, played soft jazz, and rested his hand on my waist like everything was perfect. I stiffened under his touch, wondering how many times in the past I had ignored that stiffness. Maybe he had been acting all along. The only difference was that back then, I'd been blind enough to applaud. After dinner, he went to his office, then returned with a light brown envelope. "I have something I'd like you to sign so we won't have to worry too much later." I frowned slightly. "What kind of paperwork?" "Just a few adjustments to our financial files, consolidating things for legal convenience," he said, handing me the documents. "You just need to sign at the end." I took the stack of papers. I didn't flip through them quickly like a wife who trusted her husband. I read line by line, eyes scanning each section while my stomach slowly tightened. Asset transfer, property ownership transfer, savings account, retirement investments. All transferred to Zachary. I looked up. He was smiling, staring straight at me without blinking. "Planning to sign it now?" I placed the file on the table, silently. Every move I made was measured against the fury I was barely containing. "This isn't a minor adjustment, this is all my assets. It's just a formality, you and I are one, why keep things separate anymore?" he said with a faint smile. But I could see the tension in the veins on his neck. "Then why the urgency, and why didn't you tell me beforehand?" His eyes darkened, his smile vanishing in a blink like someone flipped a switch. "You're blowing this way out of proportion, Nova. Or maybe you're trying to take everything and leave me with nothing." Zach leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his voice suddenly dropping. "Cold as a verdict. Don't make this more complicated than it needs to be." A threat? No, it was a confession. I gave a faint, bitter smile, for the first time feeling like I had the upper hand in my own home. "Let me think about it," I said, flipping the file closed and placing it on the kitchen counter. "There's no rush, right?" Zach stared at me, then reluctantly nodded. "Right. Just don't take too long." I left the living room, heading upstairs, heart pounding in my ears. I wasn't naive Nova anymore. From the moment I saw the name Ilya Morrow light up on his phone, I had snapped out of it. And I wasn't about to let some backstabbing man steal the life I had built from nothing. Zach thought he was smart. He'd never actually seen the real me. But he would. I sat alone in my office that night, the light from my laptop screen casting shadows on my tense face. The document Zach had given me still sat on the kitchen counter, where I had deliberately left it so he'd think I was still considering. But the moment I read, "transfer of ownership," his game was over. I didn't need more proof. Zach didn't just want to leave me. He wanted to strip me down to the last cent. And I, Nova Keller, was not going to let that happen. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual, hair tied neatly, face unreadable. Inside me was a storm, but on the outside, I was myself. Professional, composed, and impossible to decipher. I picked up my phone and called the one person I knew could keep a secret and was sharp enough to help me strike back. Clara Whitmore, financial attorney and my old friend from law school. Not many people knew I once helped Clara handle a multi-million-dollar lawsuit in the tech industry. And since then, we'd maintained a discreet but solid relationship. Nova, her voice was as sharp as ever. It's been a while. I need to move all my personal assets into a trust, as fast as possible. There was a brief silence on the other end. Zach? Yes, and I need him not to know until it's too late. Clara didn't ask any more questions. She understood. With someone like Zach, the only way to survive was to stay one step ahead. The next 3 days were a silent race. I quietly gathered everything. Account lists, property records, personal stocks, anything under my name. I created a new email, used solely for contacting Clara. I hired a third-party trustee, a law firm based in Austin, Texas, that Clara recommended, specializing in sensitive asset transfers. Step by step, every cent of my assets was pulled out of Zach's reach. I also reset my entire banking system, changed passwords, enabled two-factor authentication, moved savings to a separate bank, and completely severed all financial ties with Zach. With each move, one thing became clearer. I was no longer a victim. At night I still cooked, still smiled, still let Zach put his arm around me while we watched the news. He suspected nothing. Still talked about upcoming trips, still asked if I needed help with his legally convenient paperwork. I nodded and said, "I'm still reviewing it." He had no idea I was flipping the board. A week later, everything was done. My personal assets, including a $580,000 investment from the law firm, the condo I owned before the marriage, and my retirement fund, were now fully protected in an independent, legal, and untouchable trust. Completely unrelated to any joint accounts with Zach. That night he brought out the folder again, placing it on the table like it was some romantic gesture. "You've read it, right?" Zach asked, voice soft as silk. I raised my wineglass, took a sip. "I have, I just need a little more time." He shrugged, not the least bit anxious. Because he thought he'd already won. "I just want everything tidy, in case life surprises us." I set my glass down, lips pressing into a faint line. "Yeah, I think so too." He didn't know that a life surprise was coming. And this time, he was the one about to be surprised. I went to bed early, leaving Zach with his laptop and his business call that was surely with Iliamaro. I didn't need to know the details anymore. I had passed the stage of pain and rage. Now, I was as calm as a scalpel in a surgeon's hand, cold, precise, and unwavering. Before closing my eyes, I opened the last email I'd sent Clara. The subject line was simple: "It's done." Clara replied in under a minute. "Trust is locked, assets are safe, he won't get a cent." I turned off my phone. For the first time in many nights, I slept peacefully. Because I knew that by morning, Zach would make his final move. And he had no idea I'd already made mine. 1 week after I sent that email to Clara, the door to my condo echoed with 3 sharp knocks. No one had called ahead. No one said they were coming. A wave of unease hit my chest as I looked through the peephole and saw a man in a navy suit holding a thick envelope. "Miss Nova Keller." His voice was calm. I nodded. "You've been served. These are documents from the Cook County Court." I took them, my fingers squeezing the edge of the envelope so tightly I could see the whites of my nails. The door closed. The apartment fell silent. I stood there for a moment before walking to the kitchen table and slowly opening the file. Zach had made his move. The first line was crystal clear. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Plaintiff, Zachary Cole. Defendant, Nova Keller. I flipped through the pages, my heart pounding out of my chest, when I landed on the section titled, Asset Requests. Equal division of all marital assets. Full ownership of the West Adams condo. Rights to use the Tesla Model Y. 50% stake in the joint investment account. Monthly financial support due to unequal income. I laughed. A hollow, bitter laugh. He wanted it all. After betraying me, he thought he could draw himself a brand new, comfortable future, using my money. I didn't wait. I picked up the phone and called Clara. Zach just filed. I know, Clara said calmly. The court notified us of the preliminary hearing schedule this morning. He's asking for everything, even the condo and the car. Clara chuckled, this time with a hint of amusement. Let him ask, he has no idea we're already several steps ahead. 3 days later, I was sitting in Clara's office, sunlight from the large window casting a diagonal glow across the thick stack of documents on the table. Clara flipped through each page, explaining every section like she was narrating a fireworks show, and I was the VIP audience. All your personal assets have been transferred to the Legatus Holdings Trust prior to the divorce petition being filed, Clara said. Legal. Protected. Untouchable. I nodded slightly, eyes fixed on the bold printed line. Assets classified as individually held, not marital. Can he sue? He can try. But he'll lose. I exhaled. Not from worry this time, but because, for the first time since this all began, I knew I'd won the opening move. The preliminary hearing took place in courtroom 12B of the Chicago Civil Court. Zach showed up in an expensive gray suit, tie neatly knotted, eyes scanning past me without a flicker of emotion. He looked like a man confident of victory, if you didn't notice the slight tremor in his hand as his attorney handed him the file. Clara sat beside me, posture straight, gaze sharp as steel. When the judge asked about asset division, Zach's lawyer stood and confidently delivered a speech about legal entitlement to marital property, emphasizing the emotional support and contributions to his wife's career throughout the marriage. I said nothing, let him perform. Then Clara rose, her voice rang clear, unwavering. All assets currently held by the defendant were legally transferred into a private trust prior to the divorce filing. We have documentation, transfer receipts, and confirmation from the bank, dated before the 17th of last month. The plaintiff has no legal claim to these assets. The air in the courtroom thickened. Zach leaned over and whispered something to his lawyer. They both bowed their heads, conferred briefly, and then his attorney requested a pause to verify the information. I said nothing. I just looked at Zach. His eyes were no longer cold, they were panicked. He knew. He was too late. That night I returned home, poured myself a glass of red wine and stood by the window, staring out at the city. Rain had started falling, droplets tapping softly against the glass. The apartment was silent. No familiar cologne, no stealthy footsteps in the night. I called Clara back and said just one sentence. Zach knows he's lost everything. She laughed. I bet he'll make his next move by tomorrow morning. Men like him don't give up that easily. I nodded and ended the call. I knew Clara was right. Zach wouldn't go down without a fight. But now? I wasn't the prey anymore. I was the one setting the trap. I should have known the first victory wouldn't make Zach back off. Men like him don't know how to accept defeat. They only know how to turn humiliation into ammunition. And sure enough, less than 3 days after the preliminary hearing, I felt the first wave of his next attack. It didn't come as a subpoena or an email from his lawyer, it came through looks. At the office, co-workers glanced sideways when I walked into the conference room. A few whispered behind my back in the hallway, conversations abruptly stopping when I passed by. I called Rachel, my assistant, standing at her desk, looking uncertain. Phone in hand, as if she'd just read something she couldn't believe. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice low and sharp. Rachel flinched. I wasn't sure if I should tell you. I crossed my arms, my gaze cold as steel. "Tell me." She swallowed hard, then held out her phone. On the screen was a screenshot of a message. Heard Nova Keller is using a fake name to launder money through a trust, dodging nearly $100,000 in taxes. Don't tell anyone I said this. Her husband's former lawyer is the source. A wave of fury surged through my chest. I clenched my fists, blood pulsing in every fingertip. Who's spreading this? Rachel shook her head. Not sure, but people are saying Zach's been opening up to a few mutual acquaintances. Sounds like he's spinning the story. Saying you embezzled marital funds and used a shell entity to hide assets. He really was a snake, slick, poisonous and pathetic. I didn't say another word. I simply nodded, turned around, went back to my office, shut the door, and started taking action. That afternoon I spent 3 hours printing everything I could find. Screenshots of messages, comments from social media groups, leaked emails from anonymous addresses. Every line of slander was a dagger, aimed at the reputation I had spent over a decade building. I sent everything to Clara. Less than 30 minutes later she called back, her voice no longer cool and composed. It was blunt, sharp like a steel blade. We're threatening a defamation lawsuit, immediately. I want him to know I'm not afraid, I said. And I won't stay silent anymore. I'm sending legal cease and desist letters to him and his attorney. If he opens his mouth one more time, we take this to court. I nodded and hung up. But I knew threats alone wouldn't be enough. Zach didn't understand boundaries. He'd only stop when dragged into the light and stripped of everything. 2 days later I saw him. I walked into LaRue, the go-to restaurant for the legal crowd in the city, where I often held private meetings, and there he was, sitting at the bar. He wasn't alone. 2 men I recognized as partners from a prominent county law firm sat beside him. The 3 of them were laughing and clinking glasses like they were celebrating a win. I didn't hesitate. I didn't speak up. I didn't create a scene. I walked straight to the table, leaned in close, and whispered just loud enough for him to hear. Watch your mouth, Zach, it's digging your grave. His face froze for half a second, then quickly shifted back into that fake calm expression. Nova, you're overreacting. I smiled. Colder than January? I've sent a formal warning. All evidence has been archived. One more step and we're in court. I won't warn you again. I didn't wait for his response. I turned and walked away like he was a stain I'd just wiped off my shirt. The next morning, I got word from Clara. Zach had gone quiet, at least for now, but I knew he was shifting gears. A man like Zach doesn't back down, he just waits to strike from another angle. I looked at my reflection in the office bathroom mirror. The woman staring back at me had eyes of stone, a clenched jaw, and no trace of the trusting wife she once was. I whispered to myself. The game just changed. And this time, I'm the one writing the rules. I was pouring my morning coffee when my phone rang. Clara's name lit up on the screen. She never called before 8, unless it was something truly urgent. I picked up. Nova, we have a problem. Her voice was firm, no greeting, no preamble. My hand froze, the sound of coffee dripping onto the countertop suddenly ticking like a countdown. What is it? Zach and Ilya just filed a new motion with the court. They're accusing you of financial fraud. There are signatures, bank statements, internal transfers, all pointing to you allegedly hiding assets in offshore accounts, with signs of money laundering. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. My hand clenched the ceramic mug so tightly, my fingertips went numb. He forged it? We're not certain yet, but... Clara paused. I've sent everything to Beatrice for analysis. She's going through every line. I'll update you as soon as I can. Nova. I'm fine, I cut her off, even though my heart was pounding like thunder in my chest. But I wasn't fine. Because this time, if we couldn't find a flaw in their forged documents, I wouldn't just lose my reputation. I could face criminal charges. That afternoon, I went to Clara's office. The room was filled with documents, spreadsheets and folders stamped urgent. Beatrice, our legal analyst and financial auditor, sat at a side desk, steel-framed glasses on, her fingers flying over the keyboard like a machine. What do we have? I asked bluntly. Beatrice looked up, eyes sharp as laser beams. I found the fatal flaw in their evidence. Clara stood beside her, arms crossed, eyes full of anticipation. Beatrice continued. Zach and Ilya submitted evidence showing you transferred money to 2 Cayman accounts last March. Both accounts were listed under your name, complete with account